Welcome and thank you for joining us today for the AI Identity Crisis, Balancing Innovation with Strict Compliance in the Financial Sector. My name is Raleigh Gould and I'll be moderating today's event. Our featured speakers are Ken Buckler, Research Director at EMA, and Damon Tepe, Head of Product Marketing at Ori. Ken has over 15 years of industry experience as a noted information and cybersecurity practitioner, software developer, author, and presenter. Focusing on strict federal security standards, Ken has consulted with numerous federal organizations, including the Defense Information Systems Agency, Department of Veterans Affairs, and the Census Bureau. With 3 decades navigating the security and identity landscape, Damon excels at the crucial translation, turning complex technical innovation into clear, market-driven growth narratives. His track record spans executive leadership roles at industry leaders like Red Hat, Quest Software, and CloudBolt. Well, Ken and Damon will defer answering your questions until the conclusion of today's event. We do encourage you to log them anytime by using the Q&A functionality. Today's event is being recorded and you'll receive a link to the on-demand playback as well as some additional resources. So I encourage you to check that email out. And before I hand things over to today's featured speakers, I wanted the audience to know, as a thank you for attending today's webinar, you will be receiving a free copy of this new research. Stay tuned until the end of the event to learn out how to access your free paper. And now I'd like to go ahead and turn things over to our first featured speaker, Ken Buckler. Ken?
Hey, thanks, Raleigh. Really appreciate it. Damon, always a pleasure to have you on and chat. And this is a follow-up to some research that we did a webinar a couple months ago on, and I'm really excited on this because we took the original research and we had an opportunity to ask a couple follow-up questions. And wow, were those follow-up questions interesting. So the main follow-up question that I asked on this was, have you had negative consequences because of implementing AI? And for the people that have implemented AI, oh my gosh, 92% negative consequences. 23% of them have lost data because of AI. That's just incredible to me that we have such problems. And a lot of that I think is probably due to lack of guardrails on being able to restrict what the AI is doing. Now, Damon, I'm sure you can agree with this. How do you implement those guardrails? Well, you have to implement them by, restricting the identity access. So I think that's what we're going to be focusing on today.
100%. I mean, I think this is just an extension of what the conclusion we came to in the last webinar and the last data. And it's that, to a certain extent, we're in a rush to deploy. And I get it, right? This is potentially game-changing technology. I think we need to pump the brakes a little bit just to get those, we'll call them guardrails, in place. I mean, we'll talk extensively, as we go throughout this webinar. But there were a couple other stats I wanted to that I think mirror this, that I wanted to kind of give to the audience. So first one being non-human identities, which AI agents would fall within, outnumber humans now 144 to 1. That's Entro Labs who's given us that data. So this is deployed out there maybe more than we thought. Similar to your 92% stat, 80% have seen apps act outside of intended boundaries. And we can think of those apps as AI agents. And that was from OSO that reported that. Now, SailPoint gives us the next two that are very similar to these as well. 39% report unauthorized access incidents with agents. So they're not good enough guardrails, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Another 33% have seen agents inappropriately handle restricted data. So they have access to that sensitive or restricted data, and they're kind of mishandling it. And to me, all of these stats again point to I think the conclusion that we were just in a rush to deploy, and
Yeah.
we're falling a little short. The other thing I wanted to bring up too, and we talked about this in the before the webinar, that y'all did a survey on AI, and it was 24 months ago. I think it was late
Yeah.
24, somewhere in that neighborhood, where no one had any plans to use AI in the coming 6 months from that point. And so let's say that's
Yeah.
18 months ago, right? I mean, so like within a year, and let's just give it a little bit more time, say it's even 18 months. Man, have we come a long way very quickly.
Yeah.
And to me, that creates cracks. When we're going that quick, there's just going to be gaps in what we're providing. So
Well,
well,
and okay, so Damon, you'll appreciate my usage of this term, FOMO, fear of missing out,
yeah.
and that has been a huge driver for AI adoption, in my opinion. In that everybody thinks, well, everybody else in my industry is adopting AI, so I better go ahead and do it too, and I'll just figure out the security controls as we go along. That's
And
not a good plan.
yeah, and probably some of the people who are experiencing that unauthorized access incidences
Yeah,
or deletions, are paying some of the price for that now.
yeah,
Now,
absolutely.
whether that's a price that they'll keep paying, and it's just the price of entry to be first mover advantage, time will still tell.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling that financial services is going to be a little more conservative than maybe everybody else. So,
Yeah.
but
So one of the other stats I wanted to bring up. Now, this was from our overall survey. This we'll dive into the actual financial services here in a little bit. But solutions are not ready. IAM solutions are absolutely not ready when it comes to agentic AI. And you see this, and I think a lot of that, and Damon, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I think part of the problem is we've got a lot of legacy solutions out there that were never built for non-human identities in the first place, let alone agentic AI.
100%. And quite honestly, some of those legacy solutions today, I call it choke, but struggle with, from a performance perspective, with even just customers. Hundreds of millions of
Yeah,
customers. Now we think about this 144 to 1 stat with agents and go, oh my Lord, what's coming? If it's not already somewhat here, and probably straining some of those systems, obviously, from a resiliency, compliance, scale, and security perspective.
yeah.
So a little foreshadowing, I think, I think
And
here,
and
but
and something I think so I actually have a visual aid I'm going to show on my camera, believe it or not. Something I think it's important for people to realize is that when we talk about agents, we're not just talking about something running on a computer somewhere. Okay, so this right here is a little gadget I picked up from Amazon for like $16, and it is an AI agent, an AI voice agent, and I can actually turn it on. I can talk to it. It can, assist me with stuff. I program it whatever I want its expertise to be. That's the future right there. That's the future of where this is going, is that you're not just going to have an AI agent that's off doing work in the cloud somewhere. You're going to have one on your desk doing work with you. But of course, if I give this AI agent unrestricted access to all the files on my computer, what's going to end up happening? Well, there's a 30% chance that it's going to delete some of those files. So we have to restrict those
well,
identities.
and think about this too, right? I mean, like that's one agent that you have in your little handheld
Yeah,
thing. I mean, we've got another agent that when we go to the browser, there's another agent when we go to this application. There's an agent when we get into the car potentially, to take us someplace. So, getting away from this is not gonna
yeah,
happen, and it's just become part of our lives. And I think the sooner that we learn how to put the proper guardrails in place, the other thing too is authenticating. Are you a good bot?
right.
Are you a bad bot? I don't. How do I distinguish? And
Yeah,
even though I may give you restricted access to sensitive information based on what you tell me your role is or whatever I think your role is, I still got to know whether are you working on behalf of someone I know? Are you allowed to do those things? There's more of the permission. So we'll dig a little bit deeper into some of that stuff,
Yeah.
a little bit later, but it's definitely an issue.
Yeah, absolutely. So today we're going to focus a lot on financial sector, and that's, finance and insurance. And I'm really interested because Damon, you specifically wanted to look at the data from a financial industry perspective. And it really brought out some very interesting insights, in my opinion. So, what drove you guys to want to look at the financial sector?
I mean, I think if you think about the sensitivity, everybody cares about their money,
Right.
right? I mean, like, boil it all down. I mean, like, so when I look across industries and I go, this one maybe more so than other ones has a bit more sensitivity, has a bit more. But I mean, I
Yeah.
think about the use case of, like, I would love to be able to tell some agents, hey, go move money from here to here, go analyze my accounts over the past 24 months and tell me what
Yeah.
I'm spending on. And have those kinds of things at my fingertips. I think that's what the future is promising us. And now we just need to, I think, get some of the groundwork done in order to make that a secure and safe
Yeah.
transaction, or interaction is maybe a better term. Um, but I think that's really behind, and there's a lot of banks, and there's a lot of technology at those
Yeah.
at those banks, and there's a lot of those banks. We were talking about this a little bit before. When we talk about financial or fintechs versus more traditional bank, insurance, and that kind of thing. These companies are moving quick. They are adopting technology. They are forward thinking, and that bodes well for us being a, what I'll call, I don't know, a self-described non-legacy IAM provider. That we're bringing some newer technology, and we figure that's going to be more appreciated in the financial services sector than maybe in others. So
Okay. Very good. Very good.
there's a couple of quick things. I think it would help, if we go back to the next, that slide. I just wanted to kind of help the readers understand this. So when we think about, like, the distribution and breakdown in company size, 18%, 18.4% were less than 1,000 employees. 43.5% were 1,000 to 5,000 employees.
Yeah.
35% had over 5,000 employees, and we had 13.3% that had more than 20,000 employees. So I just wanted everybody, I want to reiterate that point here, just to make sure that, we've covered anybody in the audience, whether they're large, small, or medium, in this data. So that's.
And now multiply each of those numbers. We'll just round for easy sake. Multiply those numbers by 100, and that's how many agents you're probably going to end up in your enterprise.
Well, I said that stat earlier, right? 144 to 1.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, anytime you do this stuff, the data's old after a month. Especially as we're moving this quick, right? 18 months ago,
Yeah.
nobody's doing anything about this. And all of a
Right.
sudden, here we are
Yeah.
now. And, we'll see how much adoption there really
Yeah.
is. It's pretty big.
Yeah. So yeah, and so one of the things I did, I analyzed, what are some of the concerns as far as the financial industry folks, and what were they talking about? And they were absolutely talking about, in their open-ended responses, they were talking about, we need to have compliance with all these specific security frameworks that are very unique to the financial sector. And it's really interesting to see how the we've got compliance driving some of this, but at the same time, some of the challenges are still uh, consistent across the board. Everybody's struggling with AI security, but some of the industries are struggling more than others, and we'll get into that here in a little bit. But so I just wanted to touch on this. That this is absolutely very focused on some of the unique challenges from the finance industry.
100%.
So and I absolutely love this quote. We envision to deploy agentic AI at full scale to operate with various core responsibilities like interacting fully with customers, All right. So we're not talking about just having an agentic AI processing, making sure the transaction was handled properly on the back end. We're talking about agentic AI talking to customers, providing them customer service, just like a bank teller. Now, you don't want an AI to hallucinate when that's happening, or if it does somehow hallucinate, you don't want it to do something stupid like accidentally delete a customer's account. Once again,
Or
that's
move,
yeah,
funds
yeah,
from one to another. I mean, like, you
yeah,
do we wake up and I got zero in there.
right,
Um,
right.
well,
So, so
couple that with all the rifts that we see big organizations making, and it's all attributed to AI.
yeah,
Same kind of thing, right? I mean, it's like we are definitely jumping into that swimming pool, both feet first in the deep end, submerged.
yeah, absolutely. All right, so now let's start doing some comparisons here. Financial sector versus all other responses. Really interesting to see. It's not a big difference in some of these answers, but you can see that they've got, the financial sector has more important requirements. I would say, they're a lot more focused on training their LLMs in a private environment, a lot more focused on complying with non-AI focused regulatory requirements. That should be no surprise to anybody. A lot more focused on internal and customer data. So, and I'm also not surprised that, financial sector, they're not as concerned about sensitive or proprietary data. Their sensitive data is the customer data.
Yep. Yeah,
And
100%.
yeah, so it's really interesting to see this comparison. And as we go on, it's going to be even more divide, more gap between what you're seeing in financial sector versus other industries.
And the interesting thing to me is, with more of a focus on compliance and regulations, more access to internal customer data, I would call that access to sensitive systems. I mean, if they hold your customer data and account information, it's sensitive.
Yeah.
They may think slightly differently about that, but you know, this is only going to get worse as we keep talking about it, right? So there's this
Yep.
more and more access to that sensitive data, the internal, external. There'll be more regulations, more tightening of things. I think it's even more why you need to really evaluate what are you doing today to secure them. I mean, like, I hate to. I am probably going to be the guy who's going to ring that bell all throughout this this webinar, but it's only because it needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
I mean, the cat's out of the bag, and we can't put the cat back in the bag, but we can secure where the cat goes. Okay, I got to stop with the cat analogy. But the point being, you're right. We got to make sure we got to make sure that where these agents can go is secured. It's locked down because again, cat's out of the bag. We're already using
Yeah.
them today.
So we just talked a little bit, I believe, about this already, but widely different perspectives when it comes to where are they at in their AI journey when it comes to financial sector versus other industries. A lot fewer at scale and production, a lot more are in pilot programs. And I think that one of the challenges we need to deal with here is how do you get beyond that pilot stage?
Well, and maybe they're running into, hey, we're struggling to secure this. I mean, if any one industry is going to be sensitive to security the most, it's probably this one. I mean, government might be
Yeah,
another one, depending on the sector. But I'm kind of glad to see this. I think financial services as a whole should take a more cautious and reserved role. They have more to lose. I mean, when I think about this, I mean, each one of us uses a bank, and if we think about if your current bank had a security incident where an AI agent leaked credentials or caused some breach and your sensitive information was available now on the web because of it, would you consider switching banks? Probably, right?
yeah,
And so, this whole financial services industry is kind of one mistake away from customers choosing another provider. Hence why, again, I'm happy to see this
Yeah.
we'll call it a more conservative approach. I wouldn't call it a conservative approach, but I would call it a more conservative approach. And I see positivity in that. I think that's a good thing for
Yeah.
all of us. But at this point, it's maybe they don't know where to start, or hey, my systems stink at doing this, and I don't know who's good at doing this, and oh my Lord, what a transition period, and that kind of thing.
Yep.
It's probably doom and gloom. But you're looking at the whole elephant too, and it's like, we don't have to eat the whole elephant in one sitting. You take it a bite at a time. And I have some ideas and thoughts in around where you could start and why you might want to start there. But I'm not want to steal my own thunder from later.
All right, very good, very good. All right, so we already talked about this a little bit, but I thought it was worth, refocusing on a little bit as far as, yeah, there are a lot of additional security requirements, especially around compliance for AI. And that's not just AI focused, but also IAM focused, identity focused. So these agentic AI problems are now also an identity focused problem.
100%. And especially if they're going to act on behalf of true human identities, which is the plan, right? You're going to, whether it's an internal perspective, it's a trusted coworker, and you're asking that coworker to go do some task. Maybe it's write some code, maybe it's compile a report, or it's external agents, as I kind of alluded to before, where I'm telling my personal agent to go and
Yeah.
consolidate my spending habits, and move some money from this account to that account or whatever. It doesn't matter. I mean, like, all of those situations are sensitive, right?
Yeah.
And they're going to continue to be sensitive. And you can't have hallucinations. You can't have deletions. You just can't have it, in particular in this industry. So, I mean, like, does that put more and more pressure on IAM systems? Yes, it does.
Yeah.
And, we're going to see some of that, here bear through some of the stats too. And rightfully so. You know, I wish everyone would take a step back and say, hey, look, we need to put some guardrails. We need to put some, permissions in place. We need some authentication, authorization, audit trails of who did what. That'll help with some of the compliance efforts as well. And, I think a lot of systems struggle with that today at the scale of, customers and business partners and the like. And then when we think about this, 100% or more increase in identities hitting the system, I think there's some real fear and trepidation,
Yeah.
and rightfully so.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So now we'll dive a little more into the IAM part. And this is where we're seeing financial sector struggle a little bit more than other industries, and that's having challenges with their current IAM provider. Other industries, 30% having problems with limited ability to customize or extend their IAM. Financial sector, 35%. So that doesn't sound like a very big number, but I think that additional 5% can be very telling, in that they have more strict requirements. They have more demanding challenges when it comes to configuring their IAM, to the point that, some of them are probably also still on legacy IAMs that were never designed for any of this stuff in the first place.
100%. And when you think about, like, traditional proprietary vendors and lock-in, you're typically not going to have that ability to customize and extend the way that you want.
Yeah.
I talk to customers and prospects every week, and this is a common complaint before agentic movement and era, anyways. And again, I'll dive into it a little bit deeper, but Ori gives you that freedom to customize and extend, and we give you the options for whether it's a managed SaaS, whether you want to self-host on-prem or in a private cloud. you have that ability to customize how you want identity and access management to happen for your organization. And we kind of give you the deployment freedom to do it in a managed way or a self-hosted way of your choosing. So, and I think that's kind of born out of our open source roots.
Yeah. Oh, well, and the other thing that I think is interesting too is that when you look at the number of IAM solutions that financial sector has, it's the number simultaneous in use in a single organization. It's lower on average in financial sector. I'm sure that's by design because they want it to be lower, and ideally consolidation and moving towards a lower number is going to be the better way to go because it's probably going to be cheaper and it's going to be a lot easier to maintain and configure. So I just thought it's really interesting. 34% of other organizations rely on four or more, while on average only 22% are using four or more at the financial sector.
And when I think about how we got here, right? So like I took a different little slice of the data. I said 49% have three or more IAM systems. And so when you think about traditional, identity and access management projects, you've got workforce, you have B2B and partner network, and you have customers. So I'm guessing that's where our three systems come into play. I maybe started with one, and interestingly, you could have said the same thing about those two. Well, the workforce IAM solution that I got is somewhat legacy, and therefore it's not built for
Right.
customers and the scale that I need for customers, and hence I need another system. To me, three IAM systems is still too many.
Yeah.
I mean, again, talk with customers and prospects every week, and another common complaint I hear all the time, and it doesn't matter. I mean, it's a little more rigorous or different when it's a homegrown solution, but I mean, legacy solutions, these organizations have teams of 10, 15, 20 people managing that legacy SaaS implementation. And it's like,
Yeah.
isn't that kind of why you went to that in the first place, is to not have that many people? So, I think, we can talk about this a little bit too, is this is a perfect opportunity for consolidation.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be a lot of organizations that are looking at that. Hey, I need that fourth IAM system now for my agentic use cases. And, I would argue it's a perfect opportunity for organizations to say, hey, look, if what I have is not good enough, then raise the bar for everything.
Yeah.
Versus, hey, I'm just going to add another fourth solution that might be good.
Right. So, and to dive a little bit more into the concerns on actually being able to use their IAM solutions effectively in their organizations, we compared their preparedness gaps for their IAM solution when it comes to internal and external agents. And finance sector significantly more challenges than other industries. We're talking 62% is the biggest one for resiliency. That's that's a huge number where it's like, yeah, my IAM solution is just not prepared for any of this. Not prepared for resiliency, not prepared for security, not prepared for compliance. And especially for the financial sector, compliance is a huge driver. So that 43% is concerning.
For sure. And those are pretty significant increases, right? 12% on the first one or so, 11%, then 4%. I mean, like, that's significantly different. So I want to just spend a little time just talking about how Ori can help in these three different areas. So from a resiliency perspective, right? Ori is stateless by design, and you can deploy Ori across multiple regions, cloud providers, versus being tied to where that vendor wants your infrastructure. So if provider X goes down, we can reroute an active instance in zero downtime. So great resiliency there. We also scale effortlessly because Ori is written in Go and takes this modular approach. We call it composable, where we can scale a certain part of the solution versus scaling everything in that solution, which is a significantly different factor. The other thing too is that we manage over 2.8 billion, that's with a B, identities, and are the vendor behind OpenAI and ChatGPT's huge rise in popularity. They're now have over 900 million weekly active users. So if there was concerns in and around resiliency and scale related to AI agents, I think Ori's looking pretty decent. From a security perspective, we're standards based and we use, Google Zanzibar inspired zero trust model. So kind of as mentioned before, we're broken into those highly focused, isolated products. I will talk to, a little bit more about that. But they often talk to one another, but a compromise in one of those products doesn't mean an attacker can traverse other products like they could in a proprietary or black box vendors like Auth0 or Okta or Ping. And when I think about this from a compliance perspective, we are GDPR, SOC 2, ISO 27001, and PCI DSS compliant. We're also we're also an OAuth 2 OIDC certified solution. So as mentioned before, data residency, isolation, we can house user data wherever that customer requires it. GDPR is kind of specific about it, whether it's near users or near data centers, whatever you choose from a latency perspective. The last piece is that we offer, granular cryptographic audit trails. So this isn't something we've talked about, kind of proving who had access to what data and when. So when I think about those regulations, each one of them is going to fall into this "you better prove it to me" kind of category, is what I call it. And those audit trails give you that proof. That's just like I said, I'm going to put a little bit of that vendor touch on on our presentation, but
very good,
it's important.
very good. So let's talk about some of the actual recommendations then. How can they prepare for the agentic onslaught? I will use that word that is coming. And one of the things we did ask how their current strategy is, and a lot of it is a very cautious approach, which the data reinforces that. More emphasis on return on investment validation and human oversight, as well as ethical governance and scalable deployment. So there's a lot of we want to be able to scale, but also at the same time we want that human oversight, and those two seem to kind of be a conflicting concept.
And to me, I think the human oversight thing comes from the knowledge that my IAM system isn't where I need it to be, right? So it's like I'm trying to insert a body into the process as a control mechanism, right? Yes or no, because hopefully the human doesn't have hallucinations like AI, but you hope that that's the case. So I understand the idea, but again, I go back to the scale, 144 to 1 human. We don't have enough bodies to put human in the loop in every scenario. So what's that? I think that's why we need to focus a little bit more on what are the guardrails, what are the permissions, what are the, how do I identify and scope out with least privileges, these AI agents? Because, we have a history in IT of over provisioning for convenience. And if we do that, we're going to have just an infinitely bigger problem on our hands. So, hopefully we take that more. And this industry in particular seems to be taking that kind of more cautious approach. So, love it. I think hopefully this kind of messaging is resonating with this audience today.
So, talking about security gaps, how do we fill those gaps? Well, the biggest thing is start with good documentation of policies, and then implementing those tools and controls around those policies that you have built, and that's for internal and external agents. Damon, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think if you turn this around, right, this is what I did. 50% of the time we have written controls in place, then 43% of the time we don't. And if 78% of the time I have tools and controls in place, 22% of the time I don't. And 62, right, is 38% of the time I don't. So the point I'm trying to make is that you need controls in place nearly 100% of the time, or you're going to risk potential attack. I mean, like that's what attackers do. They find the weak spot. And if the weak spot is 43, 22, and 38%, those are big weak spots.
Those are huge security gaps.
Exactly. So when I think about this non-human identities, agents outnumbering humans, that number's rising every single day. Access to internal public-facing systems is just a requirement. It needs to be more secure. It needs to be governed. We need to get that logic into the systems such that they can scale to meet this need. Because humans, you can put a human in front of everyone, it's just not gonna. You can't. It's not gonna happen. So
yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about consolidation now. I think the financial sector, they're already kind of on the right track here in that they want to have smaller number of IAM solutions. But I think part of the challenge there is that also at the same time, the IAM solutions they're working with right now, the reason they have multiple is because they don't have any that are able of doing everything they need it to.
Agreed. 100%. And that's why I encouraged, I think a couple slides ago, is it now time to take a look at some of the, what I would call up and coming technology?
Yeah.
Legacy providers only go so far, regardless of why. I mean, like, I think it happens to every organization. We talked about this in the warm up session before we actually went live, in that I think organizations sit back on their laurels. I'm a market leader. I do a little bit of this. Well, maybe you should have done a little bit more. But hey, I didn't have to because I got customers and everybody was happy, or, I only churned a couple. Just all those games. It doesn't really matter. To me, it doesn't matter so much how we got to here. I mean, you can learn from the past. But my point is, like, it's already here. So, I can continue to fumble with legacy providers that clearly, show through the research that they are not ready and prepared. So if you're going to have to start looking outside, whether you think you need a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, whatever IAM system, my point to all of that is, if you're going to go out and evaluate other systems anyways, think about consolidation too. Because I'm guessing you can kill two birds with one stone, and you can meet the agentic need. You can consolidate and reduce, risk, complexity, and save money by consolidating down. It just seems like the time is now.
Yeah. And now one of the things that was really interesting is that something else that they seem to be at odds with, each other, is that they want to be able to have a lot of flexibility and customization, but also at the same time, they want a SaaS solution. They want an all-in-one solution. And those two really, with traditional solutions, are really at odds with each other, because the SaaS solutions are designed as not just an all-in-one solution, but a one-size-fits-all. Well, the problem with one-size-fits-all is it ends up being one-size-fits-none, because it's no two people are the exact same. No two organizations are the exact same.
And that's why Ori gives you the choice of both. And we're really one of the few organizations that takes the same code that we use in our managed SaaS offering, and we provide it to you from a self-hosted perspective, whether that's private cloud or not. So I guess this is really my slide to kind of dive in. And so when we talk about Ori as identity for builders, that's not just builders of applications, although it is, but it's builders of businesses too. So identity and access management should not be an inhibitor for growth, but to a certain extent, some organizations have had that happen, whether it's pricing, rate limits, vendor lock-in. Some of those things have been inhibitors to some of the smaller organizations that are growing rapidly. And it can be a blocker. So that shouldn't be the case. And Ori's really, I think, positioned well from a pricing perspective, a transparency perspective. I'll dig into all of these things. So Ori also consists of multiple products. So as I was talking about earlier, these open source projects. These are the colorful names kind of in the middle of your screen. And this is what makes Ori composable. Maybe another word would be modular, such that you can bolt them onto an existing stack. So maybe you just want OAuth 2 and OIDC authorizations, you can use Hydra. You just want to secure API keys with things like token derivation and macaroons, use Talus. So, that's the idea of this composability is you can use what you want, don't use the other things. It's just complicating the system. There are a couple other things that make Ori different, and that's the API first composable deployable. And I just want to talk about those real quickly. API first being this is enabling you to build a completely custom and branded user experience or AI experience while keeping the underlying infrastructure separate, scalable, and easy to integrate with. So it's kind of keeping those things separate. If you need a UI, we have some that we can provide you. But again, talking to multiple customers, this is an area where they want to control this. This is one of those customizable areas that they want that control, and we give it to you. Composable, I just described this a little bit earlier. This is kind of that ability to consume certain functionality without having to consume all functions. So with Ori, you can pick and choose what capabilities you need versus what the vendor requires you to buy and use. Deployable. I also touched on this one a little bit earlier, but it's worth hitting again. With Ori, you kind of have the freedom to choose your deployment model of choice. If you want self-hosted, great. You can do it on-prem. You can do it in a private cloud. We also provide you the option of a fully managed SaaS version too. And yes, that SaaS version is extendable and it is customizable. So we can meet the different and unique needs of financial services and that kind of SaaS paradox that we talked about. It's worth mentioning too. This is all the same code. It's roughly the same features. It's really just your choice in how you want to go about doing this. I talk with some customers that talk about it being a backup plan. Well, hey, I'm going to start with your managed service, but if we ever want to move on-prem or bring it back in-house, we can. To put in perspective, OpenAI is a self-hosted solution and not our SaaS offering, which leads me into scalability. Another huge area. Ori is one of the most scalable IAM solutions on the market. I talk with unhappy customers of Auth0 and Ping every week. One of the common issues is scalability and performance at peak loads. So you need IAM to work seamlessly when there is the most traffic. And it doesn't matter whether it's AI traffic or customer traffic or B2B traffic. You have to have that scale. We've kind of hit that home a little bit today. And again, I want to mention that Ori is the provider behind that OpenAI ChatGPT rise. They started, it was like a year and a half ago, they had 100 million users. I think it was like a month. They are now up to 900 million weekly active users a week. So, I think sheer number of AI agents now and in the future is going to push the scale limits of most IAM systems. My suggestion is go with vendors that have that proven ability to scale. The last point I want to kind of talk about is transparency. And, coming from an open source background, that probably is clear to many of you, but Ori was born from those open source roots, which means you can see how things work. You want to trace how credentials are hashed. You want to see how sessions are managed. You want to verify there's no hidden scripts. Sure. And it doesn't matter whether you're using SaaS, which we call the Ori network, or you're using our on-prem private cloud options. We call those Ori enterprise licenses. You can always look under the hood where some of our legacy providers that we've been poking at definitely don't give you that freedom. So I appreciate the time and letting me get my little pitch in.
I appreciate your time, Damon. And of course, as a reformed coder, I appreciate the open source roots as well. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, very good, Raleigh. Let you take it from here. I think we might have a few questions, and then also you want to give them instructions on how to get the white paper.
Yes. Thanks, Ken. Before I dive into the questions, I wanted the audience to know that you will be receiving a link to get your free white paper in the follow-up email that will go out later today. So be sure to check that email out. Now, jumping into the questions, starting with you, Damon, we've begun piloting the use of agents, but considering all of the security and governance angles, we're not sure where to begin. Where do you advise we
Yeah,
begin?
we get this a lot too. I think there's like this paralysis by analysis thing that goes on. So, in our opinion, every agent needs to be authenticated, authorized, and accountable. And to me, I would just call those the basics of identity and access management. Maybe in more practical terms, organizations should really begin by being able to kind of answer these following questions: Who are you? Right? I mean, like we have to identify who is it. That's good, bad, bot. What are you doing? So you need some kind of observability and auditing of what actions agents are taking. What are you consuming or serving? I see this as more data governance. This really isn't an ORI thing, but I think the who you are is an ORI thing. The what are you doing is an ORI thing. What are you consuming and serving is probably more of a data governance thing. Um, where can you go? And this is to me about permissions. What can you do? What can you not do? This isn't tracking them. That's the what are you doing part. But what can you do? And then lastly, I think is you need some kind of kill switch. What happens if an AI agent goes rogue, as we've talked about, and starts deleting production databases or start doing just wonky stuff? And we need a kill switch. We need a way to turn that guy off now, not wait until they make a little bit more damage. And this is also something that ORI can provide. So just to reiterate, who are you? What are you doing? What are you consuming or serving? Where can you go? And then how do we kill the switch? And this is all modeled after, CSA has come out with like an agentic framework. And so, I kind of stole it a little bit to talk to you guys about it. And interestingly, I think Ori can help you with most of that too. So,
And if I can jump in here real quick, something I did want to add to that is it's important to define your business use cases for AI when you're trying to implement it. Don't just implement AI for the sake of implementing AI. Implement it with a specific goal, and don't just let it run wild, because that's how you're going to end up with so many problems. You need to make sure that you have, this is what I want the AI to do, and then I'm going to put in the identity guardrails to make sure that the AI only does that.
Great
yeah.
insights. Thank you both. Ken, staying with you, you position composable IAM as the way to resolve the Sachs paradox. In practical terms, what does a composable approach look like for a financial institution that wants both simplicity and control when scaling agentic AI?
And I'll probably defer to Damon on a lot of this, but I think, really as far as composability goes, it's you need to have it. Just like you need the AI to be doing what you want the AI to be doing, you need your IAM solution to be doing what you want your IAM solution to be doing. And you need to have it really custom tailored, not custom software, but customized towards your organization's business needs, business goals, use cases.
And just to take that a little bit further, I would encourage organizations, and they're telling us that this is what they want. So like when you go to an IAM vendor who's rigid, that doesn't give you the ability to customize, doesn't give you the ability to extend and build the IAM the way that you want it, whether it's for agentic or customer use cases or B2B use cases, it doesn't matter. I mean, like I think we're pushing the limits of this work within the way that I want you to work, the vendor control issue. Um, and the other beauty is that Ori lets you pick the features and functions you want to without having to purchase or use all the other stuff. So like when you think about some of the, I call them black box or proprietary vendors, it's you have to buy the whole thing, and sometimes you have to use the whole thing because if you want to use the MFA piece, it requires three other pieces too, and that's not so much the case with Ori. There are some dependencies. I don't want to get into trouble with some of the technical folks, but I think the idea here of simplicity and control touches on this unique characteristic that Ori has of deployment freedom. You have the ability to control and change in each one of those deployment options. Um, And so you can kind of go back and forth. I like to think of them as backup plans for each other. And future proof is an overused marketing term, and I apologize, but to to a certain extent, it is somewhat future proofing. If in the future, today you want to self-host because you want to manage it and keep it close to the vest, and tomorrow you're more open and willing to move to a SaaS or managed platform, we're giving you that path. So
That's great. Thanks, Damon. And what are some financial service organizations working with Ori? Can you discuss that?
yeah, sure. I'm probably just going to rip off some of the bigger ones, but Capital One, T. Rowe Price, Visa, Fidelity, Deutsche Bank, Dun and Bradstreet, Daily Pay, Deriv, more fintech, Mass Mutual, some of the banks, BBVA, huge South American bank, Bank Jago, Kotak Mahindra Bank. The other thing that I tell people, because you might not have heard of Ori yet, obviously some of those bigger names have. Um, we handle over 4.4 billion transactions a day. So if there was concern in and around, well, I don't know about this little Ori, if they're going to be able to meet my needs. The other thing, Ori manages over 2.8 billion identities and has over 33,000 production deployments. So maybe it's the little IAM vendor you've never heard of that is deployed in a lot of places that you have heard of. So, yeah, that's probably about how I'd answer that one.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Damon and Ken, for taking those audience questions. And I wanted to thank our audience for taking time out of your schedule to join us today. As I mentioned, you will be receiving a follow-up email that will include this new research, so be sure to check that out. Thank you again for joining us, and I hope we'll see you at a future EMA research webinar. Thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Ken.
Thanks.
Thanks, Raleigh. Thanks, audience.